Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to the Labrador Energy Podcast. We're back here with Daniel OLEL, his second time on the podcast. Third time. Oh, very good. I'm losing track. I was actually, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man.
First time meeting into 2021. How's life?
Life's all right. Back to Berlin.
You went back to Uganda, yes?
I was in Uganda for December.
How's that?
It was really good. The weather, oh my goodness, I'd forgotten how good Ugandan weather is, man.
How long has it been since you went back to Uganda?
Since 2016, so it was about 4 years.
4 years?
4.5 years.
Holy shit. Is this the first time you went back?
No, second time.
Second time. Oh my god, how's the reverse culture shock this time around?
Not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Because like the first time I went back, it was a bit hard.
Okay.
It's a bit like, what the fuck? And now it's more or less, I think it's because it's weird. I'm not that old, but it's like, I feel like I'm a bit older.
Okay.
So kind of more comfortable in my life, in my ways.
Do you feel rich when you go back to Uganda now?
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Oh shit.
You do like look at the prices and I'm like, yeah.
I mean, it depends. It depends. Like one of the things I realized that like there's certain things that I will definitely pay for without batting an eyelid. Mm-hmm. There's certain things I'll be like, fuck no.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
like what's the thing that you would have batted an eyelid before? Now you're like, yeah, I got the software engineering euros coming here to Uganda.
It's more or less transportation. So so in Uganda we have these things called bajajes. Like bajajes then is a brand. It's a motorcycle brand.
Okay.
It's manufactured in India. But it's a taxi, it's a motorbike taxi, and you can either call it a bajaj or a boda boda.
Boda boda?
Boda boda,
okay.
Yeah. Boda
is that
boda.
Also another taxi kind?
Yeah, I mean, so it has an interesting story. The name boda boda came from the eastern part of Uganda where there were these guys, originally they were bicycles, right?
Okay.
So when people would be crossing over from Uganda to Kenya, there were guys who would come with their bikes and they'd be yelling, like calling out customers like, hey, border, we're going to the border, let's go to...
I see.
And the name just kind of stuck, so it's now border borders. Because it's like a quick and fast way to get things done.
Right.
So like now all over Uganda, like border borders are in existence. They're predominantly motorcycles.
But do you like book them through your phone, or is it like?
Yeah, you can book it through the phone, but no, it doesn't really work perfectly.
Okay. The GPS or like the phones are older, or?
No, it's just because of the way the economy is set up. Mm-hmm. The problem is most of the apps that do these things, like the tech apps in Uganda, are not built by Ugandans, or they're not owned by Ugandans.
Okay.
So the product managers, the people who make the ultimate decisions of where the product is supposed to go, are not really Ugandan or African.
They're not familiar with the problems? Or like the use cases, or?
Yeah, they have a different perspective, which is good. Okay. But it's not properly like a Ugandan perspective.
But so who are they owned by then? Is it India? Is it like Americans or like Turkish or Chinese?
It's an Estonian startup. Bolt, which
yes.
invested in Grab or Gab, which is in Indonesia, and they also have a stake in Safe Border, which is the Ugandan app.
Okay, yeah, so they've really gone like the developing world, because like for example, Bolt's the first international office is in Romania.
Yep.
So then like my friend was just telling me a message that they got a message from Bolt about like 100% free ride, because they're trying to incentivize people to get more.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like they went the Uber route, but to a different market.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like they came to Uganda. Anyway, this is the perspective of a Ugandan who lives abroad.
Right.
It's just my own. So it's a different view. But so they come, they build the apps, and I got there and I was trying to use the app, and I was just like, there's no fucking way I'm going to use this app. Because first of all, in order for such an ecosystem to work very well, you need a very kind of like well-developed payments framework. Okay. Which is not that developed in Uganda yet. Right. So what you have is you hail the boda guy, he comes, the locations are not perfect, so you can meet the guy somewhere. Right. And then he's supposed to get paid, or she's supposed to get paid through the app after you've completed the ride. But sometimes what people do is the gam, and usually it's the border guy who tells you to cancel the ride in the app, and then you negotiate a new price. Really? Yes. Okay. And then you negotiate a new price, which is usually 1,000, 2,000 shillings. Okay. 1,000 shillings.
Shilling is the currency of Uganda.
Yes. So it's like maybe 1,000, 2,000 shillings, which would be anywhere between 25 to 30 cents cheaper. Well, that's a lot.
Okay.
Right? So you negotiate a cheaper price and you go to wherever you were going.
Okay.
So yeah, for me, the traffic jam there is a whole other beast.
Right.
Like going from here to say Spandau, which is 14 kilometers away, in Berlin would probably be a half-hour ride.
Yeah, 30 minutes, I'd say.
30 minutes, 40 minutes if you're driving. With Ugandan jam, it's probably 2.5 hours.
Because just the pure chaos.
There's so many cars on the road. It's not necessarily, well, there's chaos, of course.
Right.
But there's so many cars on the road.
Is it because, for example, like the same thing happens like in Bucharest when there's like traffic, there's a lot of cars, but the problem is like the infrastructure is just is not designed for that many cars.
Yes, but it's also, building more roads is not going to fix the problem.
Right.
Because you build more roads, more people buy cars.
Right.
Right. So it's kind of like a fulfilling prophecy. Right. So I think for me, my suggestion would be for us to do it is to build proper high-speed rail or public, like having the public transportation system that really is good and works.
Right.
Would work for Uganda because. Especially Entebbe Road, like you just have a train line that is like, let's say you have like an S-Bahn line equivalent that just goes straight, and it has specific stops.
Right.
That would work. People get off the train line, they take a boda boda home.
Right.
That would be the other way to do it. But there are so many cars on the road. So for me, one of the things that I do is just jump on a Bajaj, on a boda boda, and just ride the boda boda around.
Right.
And the boda boda cuts the time in threefold, fourfold, fivefold.
Because essentially it's a motorbike, right?
It's a motorbike, and those guys have their own road rules.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. Like,
that was my reverse culture shock. The Boda guys have a different set of road rules. This guy, I remember there was a one-way street where this guy just got on, and he went the opposite way of the one-way. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Or sometimes it will be a two-lane road where traffic is coming one way and traffic is going the other way. But in order for him to get to the other side, he basically goes the opposite route, and he just turns.
So, are you just holding on to the guy?
Well, no, you're holding onto the thing for dear life, and it's so exhilarating. You feel alive, man. You're like, I'm probably, if we crashed, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
But the whole time you're going, oh man, because you're sitting directly above the engine of the motorbike. Right. So like that vibe, for some reason, that vibration just creates this sort of adrenaline rush.
Right.
And this guy is just taking you at like ridiculous. I don't know. It's a fun ride. It's a fun ride.
I mean, it sounds like exactly like the stuff you see in like Thailand and like Indonesia.
Exactly. You know those things that those things that people ride in Thailand.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have the Indian manufactured versions of those, and they're quite popular in Uganda.
Right. So then, for example, in that situation, like does Bolt own those? That's the Boda Bolt owns. No, they own the cars, right?
No, they don't own anything.
They don't own anything. Sorry, they operate and they help you.
They operate and they run. They operate the apps, and then Boda guys sign up to the apps, and then people download the apps and they hail transportation through the apps. It's
like Gojek in Indonesia. I don't know if you know.
Exactly. Yeah. Gojek is actually one of the investors. Okay. I don't know. It's a ridiculous web. Right. It's a very massive mashup. Well, it's really interesting. But you know, Corona happened.
How bad is Corona in Africa now? Because I heard that. Well, I was watching like the Daily Show, and I don't know how reliable it is to get my news from Trevor Noah. But he was saying basically that Africa is dealing with it much better because a younger population.
I mean, well, that's one of the reasons. There are multiple reasons why Africa is doing okay.
Right.
So the first one is predominantly young people. Predominantly young people. Also. This is not a good thing, but I think people's immune systems have had a lot of practice.
Right.
All sorts of diseases. So I think in some ways you tend to have a more active immune system.
Right.
Yeah, that can be debunked as a theory. But also another thing is that people don't really travel that much.
Right.
So when one of the first things that happened when the first big lockdown happened was African countries don't fuck around. Like especially when it comes to epidemics, at least I know the Ugandan government doesn't fuck around. Epidemics, they will lock down an entire area, China style, to prevent the spread. Of course, you could argue whether it's good for people's human rights or whatever, but
it's effective.
Yeah, it's very effective. So as soon as Uganda locked down with one case. They blocked
case.
Yeah, well, because if they let it would have.
They're afraid that if it escalates, it shuts down.
Yeah, so they set up protocols very, very quickly. In any case I was planning to go home anyways. So it was around. So I remember it was Feb. We were seeing things happening in China. Cases started climbing in France, Italy, and Germany. And I remember one day, my brother just writes me, he's like, hey, don't buy your ticket yet. I'm like, why? He's like, he sends me a link. They had already banned travel from 10 countries, and all of them were in the EU, and all of them had like, I think at that time there were like 1,000 cases. Uganda was like, we don't give a fuck.
Right. Don't want the shit.
Yeah, so Uganda locks out travel from a bunch of countries, from the EU especially, and the US.
Right.
And then 3 weeks later, Germany, of course, locked down. Yeah, and then they instituted some really strong protocols. Everybody was coming in, who had to be quarantined, this and that. Yeah, and they kind of dealt with it very well. So people don't really travel that much. And if you look at the cases in Uganda right now, of course, you know, yes, there's common spread, but the vast majority of the cases are wealthy people who've gone on holiday or who've gone on business trips.
Right, that's an interesting, because it's an interesting perspective, because like as you can see, like in the US, basically all the it's kind of like the working class is super affected, right? Because there's so much of a culture of like eating out at McDonald's or like going out and like just whatever. But then like countries.
No, well, I think it's different.
They have a weaker immune system because they eat shittier food, right?
No, I think the reason why Corona is punishing a lot of it is because people travel a lot. People like the US is open, the EU is open. Like you can go to France today, like nobody's going to stop you. It's your right? Whereas Africa is not as open in that way. So. But
you need to have a passport. You can't just travel with your ID card.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in East Africa, you can travel with an ID card because of the East African community.
Right.
But like, speaking in the sense of contagion is, people are bringing, like, look at the UK variant of Corona, right? People went to the UK for holidays, whatever, they picked it up. In Uganda, people don't really travel that often. There's not that massive connection to all of these other countries. So people bringing in the strain, it's a very tightly, there's probably only one route, and the people who are using that one route are the rich people.
Right, okay.
And in the US, you know, there's free travel everywhere, people are traveling here and there. And so the US is a massive country.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like,
was your family particularly, do you want to take that or?
Nah, I'm not going to take it.
Was your family particularly worried about the corona and you coming back, or like what was their particular?
Well, they just asked me what the protocols were. I followed the country protocols. They were like, okay, you're good.
Okay.
Because getting into Uganda was tough. Like, I had to get a test, and then I had to fill in a bunch of forms.
Right.
Much more stringent than, for example, coming to live in Germany.
Interesting, because like for example, like I had a friend who came back from Mexico and they had to do some COVID tests in Mexico. Yeah. And one COVID test in Mexico was about 150 euros. And it's like, what the fuck, for Mexico that's super expensive.
Yeah, no, Uganda the tests were subsidized.
By the government?
Yeah, if you took a test from the government lab, it was 65 euros, which is the same as here, and you get your results in 24 hours.
Interesting.
If you went private, it would jump maybe to 100 euros, but yeah, the test would only be expensive if you needed them rapid. So if you needed a PCR test, because that's the only test that they're going to allow you to fly out with, 6 hours. 6 hours was 100 euros. So that's it.
Okay, so when you went back now, like what was the vibe? You know, 4 years haven't been. Do you still have friends there? Do you still have like?
Still have my friends, man. Life has changed. People are having babies like no man's business. I'd forgotten how high the Ugandan birth rate is, man. Damn, people be having babies.
Right.
Shit. People had so many. Yeah, a lot of people I went to school with are having babies. My brothers, my cousins, people having kids. The vibe is just different, man. It's like. It's both a good thing and a sad thing. It's like I feel like I'm like, man, I've grown. Like yeah. I went back to my former, like the town that I grew up in. I spent a few days there, man. I was just like, damn, things have changed.
It was a different level.
It's a different level, man. It was just a different level.
You rocking in there with like your AirPods and like you don't show that there, right?
No, I didn't.
Because like for example, if I were to go back to Romania, like even now I have the instinct of like not really taking my phone and put it on the table. You know what I mean? I think it's not as bad anymore because like it's just like the problem when I was going back from like for my first year when I went back from the UK, I wouldn't tell people that I was studying in the UK.
Why?
Because like a lot of times the whole attitude will change.
What do you mean the attitude? Was it negative or
negative?
They're like, why was it negative?
I don't know. It was like, oh, It's different, you know.
You think you're better than us?
Yeah,
kind of thing?
exactly, kind of stuff. It's like a bit of a people were like pulling back. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
It's a different mindset because like people think like, okay, you're either if you study abroad, because it was such a luxury to study at the time. You know, I was able to kind of go out because of the European Union, but then people don't know that, right? So they think you're just automatically rich. So it's like, okay.
No, in Uganda, it's not really the case unless you try to flaunt it, and then people would just hate you for doing it. Right. But like. I think it's also Ugandans at least know someone who's lived abroad, or they have a relative who's lived abroad or who lives abroad, so it's not really that unique. Do you
live in the capital?
Yeah, my family lives around the capital, not exactly in the
What's
capital.
What's the capital again?
Kampala.
Kampala, okay.
Yeah, Kampala. So it's like, yeah, they live within a 14-kilometer radius.
Is it like a suburb or?
Nah. It's hard to explain. I would say it's in the greater metropolitan area.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's like zone 3 of the Befoge.
Okay.
Equivalent of zone 3. Like, yeah, exactly. It's like,
and then they mostly get around by cars. I think it's
people mostly get around by cars.
Public transportation at all?
No, not in the sense of here. Because in any case, people don't realize, but public transportation is very expensive to run as a business. It's very expensive. Befoge is a loss-making enterprise.
Of course, yeah, it's subsidized.
Uganda cannot afford to do that.
Right.
Well, the government, there has to be some other way in which the government benefits. In Berlin, of course, it benefits from increased economic activity or whatever. In Uganda, I don't know how they're going to do it.
Right. And then when you went back now, obviously you went to hang out with family, you had food, you had celebration, and one of the reasons why I also want to talk to you is like, because Ugandan politics were in the news. I want to talk about some Ugandan politics, guys. I was reading, and I think it's already kind of been resolved now, so we can look at it in some degree. Like I opened the BBC and it was like, Bobby Wine versus the incumbent leader of Uganda who has been there for 20 years or something, right? 36 years. That sounds like a dictator.
Okay, don't get me in trouble. No, Bobby Wine is the shit.
For those people that don't know who Bobby Wine is, I'll tell you what I know, and then you can correct me.
Okay, go ahead.
So I obviously had no idea who Bobby Wine is, but I was like, I saw the title on BBC said Bobby Wine runs for president in Uganda, and I was like, Bobby Wine, that sounds like a rapper. And then, that sounds like a rapper name.
You're not that far off.
so then I read the article, and it's basically a rapper / musician that basically came up singing positive songs about change and social justice and social change in Uganda, and he decided to run for president, and then he was like the main contender. Now, spoiler alert, he lost by like a lot. In the official records.
Yes.
In the official records, where's this a Lushchenko, Belarus type of situation? We don't know. So that's why Daniel's gonna tell us a bit what he thinks about the situation.
It's not a Belarus style situation. It's more a Russia style situation.
Russia, okay. Is he gonna get poisoned? Is he gonna have a cup of wine that tastes a bit funky?
It doesn't. That's hard to do. I think it's more or less it's like an Alexei situation, like the Russian one, but more or less just being his ass getting beat.
Really?
Which is what is happening to him. He's under house arrest right now.
He's under house arrest. On what charges?
I don't know. They said, one of the ministers went on TV yesterday and said, we are protecting him from himself.
Very. Sounds like a Britney situation. If you're familiar with the Britney Spears situation.
No, the government is using an old colonial rule, an old colonial law. They did that a lot during the colonial times when they wanted to keep like leaders or people from protesting, they used to put you under preventative arrest.
Right.
And the law is still on our books because we just borrowed a bunch of English laws.
It's convenient.
No, it's very convenient. Like, I mean, side note, but Uganda is like one of the few countries that got independence very quickly and also like bloodlessly for the most part.
When was Ugandan independence?
62.
62, okay.
Yes, but I think the process started in 1960-ish.
Right.
It took about 18 months. Very compressed period. If you look at Kenya, for example, Kenya had to fight a protracted rebellion, the Mau Mau rebellion, and a lot of people got killed. But also there are differences in the way Uganda was colonized. Uganda was a protectorate, Kenya was a colony.
Was it a protectorate of what, the British, or?
It was a protectorate of the British Empire.
And what's the difference between a protectorate and a colony?
That is a good question. I don't really know, but I just have an idea. For me, I think the idea is, colonies, they actively encouraged British subjects and citizens to go settle there.
Right.
So like South Africa was a colony before it got independence. They encouraged British people to go to South Africa.
So like they give you like land or...
Exactly.
Right.
Kenya was a British colony. They actively encouraged white people to go to Kenya. So the fraction of white white British Kenyans is much larger than it is in Uganda, for example. Whereas Uganda was a protectorate, so all they did was, as long as we accepted the majesty, whether him or her, as the head of government, and paid taxes and contributed to the British Empire, the British Empire was in charge of the country. So they just had a governor kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it got independence in 62. So what happened in that period? Because like just so like with Romania, we got basically independence. It was like unification like 1918. So that's like almost 100.
Actually, you were ruled by a guy from the House of Hohenzollern.
I think so, yeah.
He was a German guy.
Yeah, but basically, because that's the thing. And then it was like, we had like kings.
Yes.
And up till like communism.
Yes.
And then basically they were like, get the fuck out of here. And then communism came in.
Yes, cool.
And then basically the communism went up to 89, right? So that's that period. So when you guys were getting independence, Romania was kind of like just losing any form of independence. It was like communist, right?
Yes. You could say, okay, so it's a very interesting situation. Uganda is a very like interesting story for me, because like if you just look at the location of Uganda, it's a strategic location. But also like, so Uganda gets independence in 1962. The Queen is still the head of government, kind of like the way Jamaica is. They have a prime minister. But then Uganda's like, we don't want it. So a year later, we moved to a Ugandan as the head of government, who was the head of Buganda, the largest tribe. So the head of Buganda, they had, so another thing to think about Uganda is Uganda gets its name from Buganda, which is the largest tribe in the country.
Right.
They are the guys who brought the British. Basically, essentially, they brought the British. Their king literally wrote a letter. Thought he was asking for guns. He got missionaries and colonialism.
Really?
Yeah, he got the old switcheroo. So that basically is what started the whole thing. So when the British came, they took over Buganda, and then they used Buganda and some people in Buganda to take over the entire Uganda.
Right.
And that's where we get our name. So, and even during protectorate status, Buganda enjoyed special privileges within the overall Uganda empire.
So is that like a caste system, or is it like...
It was not really a caste system. Right. It's just like, for example, the way the best place to compare it is Prussia within the overall German Empire, German Federation. So Prussia provided the kings, the sort of Prussian bureaucracy, military soldiers, military officers.
They were like the executive branch, like the...
Yes, Prussia was a state, right? So Prussia ran the whole thing. So it was the biggest part of the empire. Right. So they dominate government. Right. And they influence government heavily. That's how Buganda was. They were influential. And when Uganda got independence, Buganda was a bit of a semi-autonomous state within Uganda, because Uganda was a federal state. Right. Semi-autonomous. And they enjoyed more privileges. And then, so they had a party that ran in Buganda. They were enjoying things. They merged with another party. They were leading the country. Then they had a split. 1966. They throw out the president, who ends up in the UK. He dies there, but Uganda is now under Milton Obote. Milton Obote tries to push Uganda to a socialist state, the British, the Israelis, and someone get him out. Right. And then a coup. 1971, and then Idi Amin comes in. Right. Then Idi Amin's just fucked shit up for 8 years.
Like, how did he fuck shit up? Like, what did he do?
It was tyranny. Right. The Last King of Scotland is based on, it's a fictional story, but it's kind of based on Idi Amin as the guy. Right. But Idi Amin, it was a reign of terror. So it's like military soldiers could just come and take anything they wanted. Right. They killed a lot of people. About 300,000 people were killed. Then Idi Amin starts a war with Tanzania. Tanzania supports the Tanzanian army, and a bunch of Ugandan rebels come, kick Idi Amin out. Right. Second election. So
Tanzania won the war, basically.
Essentially, yes.
Interesting.
Tanzania won the war. Technically, not really. It was more like Ugandan rebels won the war with support of Tanzania.
Gotcha. It was like an overthrowing.
Yeah, this guy basically gave the rebels.
Is Tanzania bigger than Uganda? I thought Uganda was bigger.
Way bigger.
Really?
Yeah, like Tanzania is massive. Bigger population, bigger land area.
Interesting. Khalid is from Tanzania, right? Khalid is from Captain Khalid? Yeah.
Captain Khalid is Tanzanian. Although, side note, in 2050, Tanzania and Uganda are going to be in the top 10 biggest population countries. Uganda is a very interesting case. Like, we can talk about Uganda all day because very fast growing population, very young population, small country.
Right.
Ridiculous.
Like land mass.
Yeah, Uganda is
What's the population of Uganda?
right now it's 45 million.
45 million.
It's going to double by 2050.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, I'm worried a bit. I don't know. I'm worried because things are going to get hard. It's going to get much worse.
Yeah. Right. Especially like with the numbers going up, it's more requirements. Basically, same resources, more people.
Exactly.
Sounds like a good time to buy land in Uganda. Sounds like a good time to invest in some land.
The question is, will you have it when the revolution happens?
Very good question.
Dude, just like, so Uganda is very like, because the population distribution has not really changed. The number of people the fraction of people between 18 to 64 or 18 to 60 is almost the same. Well, it's slightly bigger. Let's say it's like 50 now. It was 48% in 1960. But in 1960 we're like 10 million. Now we are 45 million. Right. So it's like, it's a much bigger slice. And when people are like, oh, youth unemployment is 30%, I'm like, 30% of 30 million is like what, 9 million, 10 million?
Right.
Unemployed. That's like the population of
it's
two Estonias or two Sweden.
It's more Estonias. It's like Estonia's like a million. It's like 9 Estonias.
It's like 2 Denmarks.
Yeah. So what do the people do in that situation? Are they in the rural community? Are they?
Man, people hustle. Uganda is a non-ending hustle.
Or is it just like off the books type of businesses?
It's a mix.
It's obviously it's not drugs. It doesn't seem like it's a drug kind of, or like that much of a criminal activity kind of place, right?
Crime is high.
Okay. But what is the most common kind of type of crime?
Robbery.
Okay.
Robbery. I see. Like sometimes people crack jokes about this, but sometimes at night, of course, they just hit you and they take everything you have.
Interesting.
But like some guys used to crack jokes before where like you'd be walking on the street and you're talking on your phone. And guys like, hey, you're on the phone? Yeah, I'm on the phone. It's like, okay, I'll wait. When you're done, just give me the phone. Just give me the phone. Like,
that's polite.
You don't even argue because like you just finish. You say, can I take my SIM card out? Yeah, you can take your SIM card out. Okay, and give him the phone and he goes. And then they go sell the phone and you probably buy your phone back.
It's interesting that at the rate of growth, it's still. At that rate of growth, it's obviously these problems become more.
They become more exacerbated.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exacerbate. I think like a country like Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, those countries, they need to industrialize like rapidly.
Right.
Almost China-style industrialization. Like you need to massively. Almost like the communists did after the revolution, because that's how you put people to work. These people are idle. If they get idle, But anyway, back to Bobi Wine. Bobi Wine's story is very interesting. Bobi Wine is so Bobi Wine's story is it's a story of a ghetto kid.
Okay.
Right. So Bobi Wine.
It's like Slumdog Millionaire from Uganda.
Better than that, I think.
Let's make a movie.
Bobi Wine, historically, the current government, Sevo, let's start with Sevo. Museveni, Sevo, M7, those are all his nicknames.
Right. When did he go into power? Is it the guy now?
So Sevo has been in Ugandan politics since the 60s.
Right.
In some shape.
And he's like, what, 60, 70?
He's 76.
Wow.
Yeah, so in 1980, he runs for office.
Right.
To be the president.
Right.
He lost.
Right.
He said the elections were rigged, so him and 26 other guys went to the bush and they started a guerrilla war. And lasted 5 years-ish. And then Sevo became president. But during the Bush War, it was fought predominantly in central Uganda, the area where Bobi Wine is from. Story goes that one of Bobi Wine's parents was kind of involved, helped the government, was in politics.
Right.
Things didn't end well for Bobi Wine's grandfather, I think, or father, one of the two. More like grandfather. So his family moved away from politics. And then Bobi Wine was born, and then his mother, something happened. I think his mother was a single mother, or she died, and he ended up in the ghetto.
Right.
There's a ghetto in Uganda, Kamwocha, very close to where I went to uni.
Right.
And he was raised in that ghetto, and so people didn't care about them. Then he became a musician around 2000, 2001, and his music was, I didn't really like it.
Right.
But I still don't really like it that much, but it's catchy.
Right.
There's a song.
Has the rhythm.
There's the rhythm, there's a song, but he also introduces words into jargon. Like there's a word that he introduced into jargon, like 2005, 2006, and like his music is like really cool. And he went from this really kid with no prospects to a big musical star.
Right.
Then he started, of course, singing about
So when he goes to like a big musical star, is he also making money?
Hell yeah!
So he's living like a good life.
He owns an island or a beach somewhere, well, in Uganda. But yes,
Right.
It's very popular. People love. He's massive. He's like. I mean, at this point, he's the biggest musical star in Uganda.
Right. So he's this is also making him money. It's putting him in a position of he's no longer like in the ghetto.
No, he's no longer in the ghetto, but he still has his studio is still in the ghetto.
Right.
And he still comes down to hang out with the kids. And in Uganda, of course, people frown. Uganda is conservative, so people frown on smoking weed, drinking alcohol, alcoholism, because usually drinking and alcoholism are very, very closely intertwined in Uganda.
Right.
So people looked down on him. People thought he was like this crazy guy because he smoked weed and
because he smokes weed.
Yeah, and at the time people used to crack jokes that he was the ghetto president, president of Uganda.
So if you smoke weed in Uganda, it's like
it's frowned upon.
Yeah,
and because it's a conservative society,
right.
And usually even the people who smoke weed are the rejects.
Okay, gotcha.
So those are the people who've decided to drop out of school, which is very much frowned upon. So so that's the story. Bobby Wine is there, and then he just has this conscience and he starts singing about these issues and. One time he's invited to meet the executive director, the Kampala Capital City Authority, which is the government organ that runs the area. Because at the time they were enforcing the law very roughly, and he sang a song where it was like, please talk to
police brutality type stuff. Police brutality type stuff.
It was not police brutality because these guys were not policemen. They were just enforcers. Like, for example, you need a permit to sell on the roadside, and a bunch of people don't really have money for permits. So they were destroying things, and he tried to talk to the government, and then he started getting more and more involved into it, and then by-election happens. In his home area, he's like, man, fuck this. Let's decide. Let me run. He ran and he crushed.
So he gets elected.
He gets elected to parliament.
He's an elected official.
Yeah, he's now an elected official.
When is this?
This is 2017.
Right,
he just comes out of nowhere and he just blows a hole through.
Right.
Like he went to parliament with. Yeah, there was no denying that he was the absolute winner of that election.
Right.
And like when he comes to parliament, like he's this big musical star. MPs, if the ruling party of the opposition, they all just like this. It almost felt like people are meeting a star rather than meeting a new member of parliament.
Still has like that whole aura of
thing.
Yeah.
And the first
starstruck. People are starstruck.
Exactly. Doesn't take long. He just gets into the middle of the hottest thing, because at the time they were changing the constitution to remove age limits.
Right.
Because before we had age limits, you had to be at least either 30 or 35, and at most 75 to run.
Right.
So they wanted to remove age limits because the president would be older when he ran. So
this is self-serving as well, right?
Yeah, so he gets into it and he's like, no, we shouldn't change the constitution, and then he gets into this thing with the government, blah blah blah. And people are like, damn, man, like he gets involved in it, and there were fights in parliament, and there are lots of clips of that fight
is
online.
Physical fights or like?
Oh yeah, physical fights. Like people are pulling mic stands and they're, hey, you should get it on YouTube. Okay. Even the Daily Show has a clip of it.
A little bit of a reaction to Ugandan politics.
Oh man, like, and then he gets into it, and then he starts this thing where he gets involved with like. Because of course a lot of by-elections are happening because there are a lot of election irregularities. Right. So sometimes the High Court will throw out an election result and an MP has to rerun. And so he does this thing where he starts campaigning for candidates that he likes. And because he's a massive musical star and he has his opinions.
He's got so much clout.
Yeah, he gets much clout. And he starts kind of like getting into elections and beating the ruling party and taking seats from them. So slowly, very slowly, and then very quickly, it becomes a contest between him and because the president would sometimes go and campaign for people from his party, and Bobby Wine would be campaigning for some other guy, and Bobby Wine's guy would win, and the president doesn't like it because on top of that,
now he's becoming dangerous.
He's becoming dangerous. On top of that, he's also opposing the president, blah blah blah. And then 2018, I think.
But how old is Bobby Wine at this point?
Bobby Wine is now Bobby Wine I think is 38. At that point, he's like 35, 36.
It's also young versus old type.
Yeah, exactly. Bobby Wine represents the dreams of a lot of kids in Uganda. Like man,
it's a generational clash.
Yeah, it's like if he can make it, I can make it. You know, yeah. So it's that kind of thing. And then one time in August 2018, I think they are campaigning in the city in the north. Man, I don't know what happened. All I know is Bobby Wine's driver was shot dead. And he was seated in a seat where Bobby Wine, because he was in the car. Right. He was sitting in the same place Bobby Wine had been sitting less than a minute ago.
Really?
So people thought. So the first story that comes out on breaking news on Twitter or everywhere is like Bobby Wine has been shot dead.
Right.
And I don't know. Essentially, what the story is: someone threw a stone at the presidential motorcade. The presidential guards got involved. Man, it was chaos. So Bobby Wine writes on Twitter. It's like I think it was Twitter or Facebook somewhere.
Right.
He writes about what was happening. It's like I'm hiding in my hotel room. My hotel room has been cordoned off. SFC, the guys who got the president, they're looking for him. They come, they beat people up. The government gets him, they beat him up, and then he disappears. Nobody knows where the guy is.
Bobby Wine?
Yeah, nobody.
He's gone. Yeah, 2008.
18.
Sorry, 18, yeah.
Yeah, nobody knows where he is. People are like, where is Bobby Wine? Right. Free Bobby Wine. Free Bobby Wine starts trending. And then international pressure comes on, and then Bobby Wine has to be honest, he has probably the best PR team I've seen of an opposition guy in a long time.
Right.
He's young, social media savvy. Like these people are helping the guy.
It's the new generation, right? It's basically I was just watching on TikTok. There was this lady on TikTok. She was like, I was a strategist for Kamala Harris's campaign. I'm 19. They know how to use the tools, yeah. So okay, so these guys are like, so international pressure comes. Who puts on the international pressure? Is the US, the UK? Who is the most influential international player when it comes to
everywhere? It's the US, the UK. Dude, we can talk about Ugandan politics for a long time.
I mean, it's fun. I like it's interesting. Does Israel?
Ugandan politics is entertaining.
Does Israel put pressure? Is Israel a power in the region? Or
the connection between Uganda and Israel is not as strong anymore. Right. There was a Israel. So the first Entebbe airport, the first version was built by Israelis. Right. That's why they had schematics of Entebbe airport. So Raid at Entebbe. Have you heard of Raid at Entebbe? The Raid okay. In the 70s, well, Idi Amin was Muslim, right?
Is Uganda? What's because obviously
85 Christian, 85% Christian, 13% Muslim, but it's a sizable. Uganda is one of the most religiously free and tolerant countries in the world, right? So pretty much most of the religions just exist very freely. It was something I never really thought about until I came here.
Right.
How much there is a very strong hard divide between Christians and Muslims. Like you don't there's a lot of.
Is there any ethnicity type of divide?
Oh yeah,
because this is what you were saying basically that the Bugandans basically they were like because I was thinking of Malaysia because in Malaysia they have they have Chinese Malaysians and they have Malay Malaysians and then they're in the government in Malaysia there are there's quotas for the amount of roles Malays should have, and then basically,
in Uganda there isn't anything of the sort where you have to have a specific quota, but the divisions are more along tribal lines than they are along religious lines, right? Yeah.
Interesting. So does that count? So tribal lines, would you count those as like a ethnical type of?
Ethnic, yeah. You'd call it ethnic because essentially there would be different ethnicities.
Interesting. Okay. So then, but religious-wise, then no one's stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah, nobody's going to war or killing somebody because they're Muslim.
There's no Muslims for
No. It's people will beef over tribal shit, but before
what is tribal shit? Like what? Like territories or like traditions or what? What is the beef?
Man, it's like those days, man. Like you know how.
Like you insulted my friend, and is it like Japanese where you have shown disrespect to you've insulted my honor?
I don't know. It's because it's been a long while since people ever okay. So Their tribes. These tribes used to fight each other. But you know, also another thing, I don't know, this is just my opinion. It could be stupid, it could be a comedic thing, but it's like, because before, Ugandans used to, like, African tribes used to fight wars, but their wars were not extermination wars.
Right.
Because, like, here in Europe, that's one thing I noticed, like, historically speaking, man, when European countries went to war, man, it was wars of extermination. Like, you want to wipe an entire group of... No!
Ethnic cleansing.
You know what I mean, those happen in Africa today. I'm not saying they
Right.
actually very... Like, the Rwandese genocide was
Right.
an ethnic cleansing. But back in the day, before colonial powers came to be, people had... It was probably because of the weapons, because people had spears, man.
Right.
You have one spear, you go, you throw it, you're like,
Ouch.
I missed. Okay. Do you have another spear? No. Okay. Let's go home.
That's a bit right there.
But then now, of course, with the weapons and stuff. So yeah, I'll give you an example. So the most extreme case in Rwanda, which is actually far more homogeneous than Uganda, for example, was the Rwandese genocide. There were Hutus and the Tutsis. And for us who are outside of Uganda, I mean, it's stupid because they all speak Rwandese, Kinyarwandans.
Right.
Like, why are they fighting?
Right.
But it's just because you hate someone from the other tribe.
Right.
It's not that they've done anything. It's just racism.
Right.
It's like, what? Why did I just...
Interesting.
But in Uganda, in Uganda, it used to be much, much stronger those days. But nowadays, because modernity, people are intermarrying and shit.
Fucking overcomes a lot of...
I'm telling you, fucking overcomes a lot.
Booty over...
Booty over... Booty over booty.
Booty over clan. Booty over emblem, or I don't know what they use.
But
booty over bloodline. Is that what it is?
Booty over bloodline. I mean, at some point when you combine bloodlines, it becomes difficult to find. Because the thing is, also in Australia, another thing I've noticed is that people usually hate things they don't know.
Of course, yeah, all the time.
Yeah. So generally, it is, and that's what Europe's problem is with a lot of things like racism and a lot of things like sexism. And
right.
You just say dumb shit or you do dumb shit because, for the most part, people don't know what they're saying and they don't realize that what they're saying is hurtful.
Right.
What they're doing is hurtful. Although there are some cases where people just evil.
There are some people that are just like...
Yeah, just evil. But for the most part, average people just don't know that.
I mean, I always give the example of how, like, for example, and it's also sometimes indoctrinated, like, for example, with the church in Romania, it's very anti-LGBTQ, right? So, like, for example...
Same in Uganda.
You're playing my song. And then, for example, obviously, when I was growing up in Romania, I myself was anti-LGBTQ because of religion, right?
I thought I was liberal, and I came to Berlin and I realized how homophobic I was.
And then basically you realize when you go to the UK, and again, nobody knows anybody that's gay or like or trans or anything in Romania. So then, like, obviously, again, they fear what they don't know. They just know that they have to fear it, right? But then when you go outside and you kind of meet people, you just realize it's just people. They're
just people. They just want to look. At the end of the day, they want to do the same things that you want to do, except they want to do it with different people.
Yeah, exactly.
And exactly. Like they want a job, they want a life, they want to live with someone, and it's just like on the same day.
Yeah, but then the point is, it's kind of like these things that are just there, and you don't know any better at that point, right? It's just ignorance, right? Interesting. So anyway, we're going to that because we're talking about the ethnic cleansing in Rwanda, the Tutsi.
Yeah. So that happened. Actually, Uganda helped. Then there was a rebel force. They took over, and then they kind of tried to fix it. So, but Uganda and Rwanda have a very interesting antagonistic relationship.
Really?
Those guys. Once in a while.
What about Kenya? What's Uganda and Kenya relations?
Yeah, okay.
Tanzania?
Yeah, okay. Like we're trying to form the East African Federation. Which is, Rwanda is part of the East African community, Burundi too, and South Sudan, but the East African Federation will be predominantly Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. Kenya is the biggest economy in Eastern Africa.
Right. What's the biggest economy in Africa?
By purchasing power parity, Nigeria.
So Nigeria is like the powerhouse.
Yeah, Nigeria, like 200 million Nigerians. Man.
Right. It's a lot of Nigerians.
There's a lot of Nigerians. So Nigeria is massive. Then South Africa is in the top 3. I think Egypt also. And those are the... Kenya is not that far off. The Kenyan economy is big.
Right.
Kenyans are savvy at business.
I met a lot of Kenyans when I was in the UK. There was a lot of Kenyans. Like, for example, one of my professors in law school was from Kenya.
There are a lot of. That's something I find very interesting about like the UK. It's like like the split between like the different countries from the different colonies, because I know there are a lot of Ugandans in the UK, there are a lot of Ugandans in the US, but there are a lot of Ugandans in the UK,
right.
A lot of Kenyans, a lot of Nigerians, a lot of Ghanaians. The Ghanaians,
Ghana as well, right? You're right.
Yeah, the Ghanaians, the Nigerians, and the Caribbeans dominate entertainment. And I'm like, wait, where are the Ugandans? Where are the Ugandans? Where are the Ugandans? I don't see the Ugandans. It's like very interesting. It's like,
what do you think that is? Because I think, for example, I mean, you have a bit of Cameroon as well when it comes to like.
I honestly don't. I think it's just the sheer number, and also just the history. I mean, the Caribbeans dominate because they're part of the Windrush generation.
Right.
There was never a call to the East African states or the West African states to come to the UK to help after the Second World War.
Right.
It wasn't there. So. By sheer fact of that, and also,
can you go back there? So basically, because I'm not familiar, what's called Windrush generation?
The Windrush generation.
Which
there was a ship called the Windrush, I think. After the Second World War, in order to rebuild Britain, Britain encouraged people from the Caribbean, like subjects, because actually the Queen is still the head of state for the vast majority of the Caribbean island countries. But at the time, in late 40s, early 50s, they encouraged people
to come over and help out.
And so people came, and at the time, you could come on your parents' passport.
Right.
So you didn't really need a passport. And there's a way that, you know how crazy, fucked up the UK immigration system is. So a lot of people ended up in situations where they thought they were British citizens, but they were not really British citizens. And so the UK starts to change its laws around immigration, and then Theresa May, when she was Home Secretary, they come up with this policy called hostile environment, where they were actively punishing employers and bank people for mostly employers for employing immigrants or people without papers. And this is when people start discovering that they're not.
They were like, oh fuck, I didn't know I didn't have papers.
So these are guys who are working for the NHS. These are guys they've lived in the UK their whole lives, and now they're getting deported. Like, you're deporting a 75-year-old, 70-year-old person. They're losing their pension. Going back to a country they've not been to in over 60 years.
They basically you're just literally sending them to the middle of nowhere. They don't know what's happening.
It was a scandal.
Interesting.
It was a big scandal in the UK at the time. It's like, I think of all countries that have had former colonies, European countries, the one that has really fucked its former colonies and people who, it's the UK. And the government is not really ashamed of it. They just don't give a fuck. Like,
interesting. It's a lot. Yeah, the UK has a long history of fucking over people. Like, because the thing is, like, I was thinking, like, basically they had the call for people to help out, and basically they pretty much use everybody, like all these external resources that were not available at the time, and basically they were like, okay, now you can go.
In many ways, the British public doesn't know the extent of the tentacles that the British Empire had.
Interesting. I mean, because the thing is, a lot of people are talking about how, like, basically in Germany there was the big Turkish migration from the 70s, and then they kind of helped in like prop up the economy. And even now, if you look at it, a lot of the German economy is doing well because of the influx of people from outside, right?
And it wasn't just Turkey. There's also Vietnam. There's a bunch of other countries, but predominantly from Turkey. And those people, there was no path for citizenship for these people. I mean, they've kind of tried to fix it. They've not really tried to fix it. But think of that, but think of it on a much worse scale, like on a much larger scale. So like, the UK was everywhere. Like, you meet people and it's like, damn, I didn't know they did that shit in India. I didn't know they did it in Pakistan. Didn't know they were doing it. Like, it's just so much.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, like, even if you the extent of knowledge that people have is very, very limited, right?
How are you going to collect all of that information? On top of that, talk about the British. Yeah, it's just...
Okay, so let's go back to Bobby Wine, because I think we kind of drifted off a bit. So basically 2018, Bobby Wine is locked up in a hotel.
And that's where international tension comes about. So they put him in a military barracks, whatever. They release him, and then he... I don't know, for lack of a better word, in Harry Potter terms, Museveni chose him. Museveni just basically crowned him as in many ways, I feel like because of the way Museveni has treated Bobby Wine, he has marked him as an equal. Right.
They were like, okay, this guy's a worthy opponent. He's a contender.
Yeah, man, just by the sheer way he's being treated, like, I would have given it a second thought. But man, the way they're just treating the guy, I'm just like, maybe he has something. Maybe he has something. And it's very
It's so easy. What's the name of the current leader? Usendi.
Sevo. Let's just call him Sevo.
So Sevo, basically, he's been in power for like, what, 26, 27 years?
No, 35, 36.
36. Is that for all purposes? For all purposes, like there's no limit on terms in Uganda.
They've removed them. That was another fight. They removed them a long time ago.
Right. So they've removed the limit on terms. They've removed the limit on age. So for all purposes, this guy's basically kind of like an autocrat.
He's not kind of. He is.
He is. Yeah.
He is an autocrat.
Yeah.
He is an autocrat.
But Uganda is technically a democracy.
Yes. But that being said, so that being said, for all of the negative things that Sevo is doing now, he wasn't always like that.
Right.
Sevo genuinely had a good heart when he came.
Right.
When they fought the Revolutionary War, when they took over, the country was fucked.
Right.
4 ways from Sunday.
Right. And he's like, I deserve to be in power forever.
He kind of lost his way around 2001, 2002. That term, I don't know what happened, but something changed during that time, and he went from, maybe I need to step back, to fuck this.
Yeah.
Because there was a point between 1995 and 2003 where Museveni was talked about in the same breath as Nelson Mandela. That's how transformative his work had been to the Ugandan economy and to just the perception of democracy in Africa. But since then, now people talk about him in the same breath as Gaddafi, which is not a good league to be in.
That is not a good league at all, yeah.
But he did a lot of things that really helped.
Right. He just doesn't trust the next generation. Or maybe he just got drunk with power, or like.
I think he got drunk on power because he started off fixed healthcare. Infant mortality dropped like a rock. HIV and AIDS was just ravaging through the country. Openly dealt with it, fixed education, rebuilt the economy. And everything that he did has kind of been undone in the last 10 years. Hospitals are broken.
By his...
by just staying too long.
Right. Just by stagnation.
Yes. So what ended up happening is, for example, I don't know how common this was in a community state, but in an environment where there is a very strong charismatic leader at the top.
Yes, man. Yes, man.
It's like in any organization, exactly. You have a lot of, the middle managers in any organization are the source of a lot of problems. And that is what is happening in Sevo's government, because a lot of decisions are deferred to Sevo, which is fine. But then you have a lot of these middle...
operational aspect is
very opportunistic people who are taking advantage and they're ruining the country. And so...
they're just there to enrich themselves.
They feed him the wrong information. I think he hasn't... I watch him on TV... and I'm just like, this guy is so out of touch. He's so out of touch. And and essentially everything that Bobby Wine is the exact opposite of him. Bobby Wine is just
so in touch.
So in touch. It's just like Sevo 50. If you want to follow Bobby Wine's story, there's a podcast. Actually, it's a Spotify original. Right. It's called The Messenger.
The Messenger.
It's really good. That is probably... That's what I was saying, man. Whoever did Bobby Wine, was doing Bobby Wine's PR, they deserve a raise.
Which is great because they're using modern technology, modern platforms to kind of push the message. And I think
just listen to that podcast.
The Messenger, okay.
It's a series. There are 8 episodes. There are 6 out. I've been waiting for the last 2.
Spotify original.
It's a Spotify original.
Interesting.
It's so good. It covers Bobby Wine. It covers Sevo properly, also very well. Parts of Sevo's background. But yeah, in many ways, the way Sevo is treating Bobby Wine is he's just marking him as an equal. Right. And Bobby Wine does not address the press. Right. He addresses Sevo. And even the way he addresses Sevo, he addresses Sevo as an equal. Right. It's hilarious.
Interesting. So are there any other type of contenders to the role? Is this
everybody else who is trying to contend and talk about Sevo is just escorting Bobby Wine. Bobby Wine is Sevo's equal, and I don't know.
Interesting. So what do you think is going to happen now with the situation? So now basically he's lost the elections. Was it fair? Was it unfair? Well, I guess
that is to be discussed. I cannot really talk about the efficacy.
It's a long story.
I can't confidently say that Sevo beat Bobby Wine. Although the numbers show it,
you also might have
there were irregularities that lead me to be like, maybe he did, maybe he didn't.
Because the thing is, if you look at Romania as well, sometimes you're thinking, how the fuck are these guys still in power? The reality is, there's a lot of there's a big part of rural Romania, the part of old people as well that are voting, and they're voting for who they know, right?
There's that.
They're voting for traditional values. They're voting for the church. They're voting for these are the power levers in Romania, right?
Yes. Yeah, but also I think that in many ways governments stay in power because the so-called middle class is comfortable.
Yeah.
When the middle class gets pissed off, that's the end of any government. Like even the communism.
That they're making money now.
Exactly, communism failed because the so-called middle class, although there's no perfect, was kind of fucked.
Right.
You could look at that. I mean, even the French Revolution basically happened
Right.
And I think the same thing. Essentially, every authoritarian government kind of fails because at one point the middle class. And that is what is now starting to happen in Uganda. Like they shut the internet down. They shut the internet down.
With the Facebook stuff and advertising?
Not just Facebook.
For the elections 2 days before or?
No, just internet. Like.
But how long did they shut it down for?
5 days?
Before
I don't know, 5-6 days? Dead, like you can't open email, nothing.
So how are people doing business for the 5 days?
Nothing, they weren't doing anything.
Really?
They weren't doing anything.
Were you able to contact your family this time?
No, no, VPNs were down, like literally they turned off the internet.
So what was the point of this?
Control information flow. That's just what it is. They wanted to control information flow. Dude, it was so bad that the Ugandan government couldn't pay its own international creditors. Really? There's a story that came out like a day or two ago where the Ministry of Finance was complaining to one of the other government ministries that, hey, you guys, we cannot pay because the government has started the new airlines. They cannot pay for the planes because they cannot connect.
So is this like because people were doing like the ballot fraud or they were like messing with the numbers or like... So
honestly, I don't know. I can't speculate as to why they did it, but they did it.
Interesting.
They did it for 5 days, man. People were pissed. Shut down, just completely shut down. Social media is still blocked right now. Facebook, Google, WhatsApp, YouTube, LinkedIn, Telegram.
Really?
Signal.
How long do you think they're going to keep it blocked for?
Who knows? It is killing the economy. Because on top of you've had Corona, now you have this.
That's right,
28, It's kind of fucked. It's fucked so much. So, man, we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think it's going to be good.
Interesting. Is this the first is this the first time this has ever happened? Shutting down social media completely?
I know, they shut down social media in 2016.
For elections?
Yeah, for the elections. That was okay. Now they shut down the whole internet.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, look, the thing is, how many more years do you think he's going to live for? Because sometimes
I don't know. It's not really a case of how long.
One guy, it's not the situation. Because the thing is, someone else is going to come in to fill that vacuum.
And also, I don't know, like the whole topic of democracy in Africa, how political governments are run in Africa. That's a very interesting topic.
So what is the option for young Africans at the moment, young Ugandans? Just leave?
The education system is great. If you can find a great job, the rest of the world needs IT, they need engineers, they need doctors. That's the crazy thing. They need doctors, they need nurses. So the country is losing out because you're basically suffering brain drain.
So where do people brain drain from Uganda? I mean, obviously you're in Germany, but do they brain drain to other African countries that are in better positions?
Everywhere. Doctors in Kenya make 3 times as much as in Uganda. Doctors in Rwanda make more than they make in Uganda.
Right.
So Uganda is losing people. Nurses, people are leaving. They go to South Africa, they go to Rwanda, they go to Kenya, they go over to the UK, Australia, anywhere in the world, China, they go. And they need to figure out a way to make opportunities for Ugandans in Uganda. There's a friend of mine who I met in Berlin, in 2019. I'd completely forgotten about that conversation. He just posted about it on Twitter. And he tagged me, and I got a bunch of followers because I don't know, he's kind of popular on Twitter. So all of a sudden, I have these followers. But where are people? Oh shit! Yeah, he was just talking about our conversation because at the time, he comes and then we're chatting. I'm like, hey man, you're smart. Why aren't you considering tech opportunities in Europe? That's because I'm like, you're a smart guy. You can code. You have a good business sense. And then he's like, yeah man, there's so much low hanging fruit. He was very excited. He talks about it. And I was like, no, I don't think so.
He was talking about what things happening in Uganda? Or what?
Yeah, he was talking about the opportunities and everything. And I was like, I do not deny that Uganda is great. Uganda is a fertile ground. But I was just like, the environment is hostile for businesses, especially tech businesses. And so he gives me a lot of, because he knew a lot more about what was happening. I was just giving him my high level view. And I was just like, he's like, yeah, no, it's great. And I was like,
I mean, he did, obviously he was thinking inside a bubble, right? He did not know the.
It's not that he was thinking inside the bubble. It's that I had a bit of a more pessimistic view.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which was, I was like, the environment is hostile. The regulatory framework is not really.
You're more critical about it.
Mm-hmm. In the sense that I'm like, we talk about African businesses and African tech companies the same with the assumption that the business environment and the regulatory environment and the political environment is the same as you'd have in the developed world, like the UK.
I mean, look, a lot of times the argument, the joke is, because we're comedians at the end of the day, the joke is basically that, in Romania, I'm sure you can as well, like, you know, there's that old joke about, like, you know, if the end of the world comes tomorrow, Romania doesn't have to worry because we're 40 years behind everyone. You know, and it's like, and I think it's like a common joke throughout like a lot of like developing countries. But then the reality there is that, okay, if you're passionate about business, do you want to live in the past or do you want to live in the future? Because if you want to live in the future, you move to like let's say the US or Germany, UK, or like Norway, where they're working on the cutting edge stuff, right? But if you're doing business in like Romania or doing business in Thailand or Indonesia or like Uganda, you're doing business like 40 years in the past of like the US or like.
Yes, there's that too. But I was also, I think our disagreement was. There's opportunity, without a doubt. There's Uganda is a young, fast-growing, blah blah blah. Just bangs a lot of boxes. But I was just like, the regulatory framework is not going to allow you. The political framework, the economic environment is going to be hostile. He's like, no, and then he gives me some other points. I'm like, fair enough. I'm still not convinced.
So what happened in the end? Did he leave? Did he stay, or what did he tag you in the thing on Twitter?
He said. Well, basically, what I'd said was could happen, essentially happened. Because I was like. One of the things I asked him was, what are you going to do if the internet gets shut down? He's like, the government is never going to shut down the internet. And I looked at him and I was like, you think Africa is Europe? And I said it cynically because we're both tipsy. I was just like, you think Africa is Europe? And I said it as a joke.
They can just pull the plug if it comes down to it. And they pull the plug.
They pulled the plug. And I was like, damn. Because there's so much of Uganda is damn.
So what is he saying now? Like, what was his... Is like, you know, this guy called it or what?
But he tagged me because it's like Daniel was kind of right. So basically what is happening is people like, because truthfully, if Uganda had the same or slightly similar regulatory and political environment, I would definitely do a startup in Uganda because the opportunity is just...
Right. I mean, basically, this is the advantage of like, let's say, being 40 years in the past. You know what playbook works. You know, look at all the what was it called? Rocket Internet startups, right? Like they saw the models in the US. They just went to Indonesia. They went to Asia. They went to Singapore. They went to Thailand.
They made a killing.
Yeah, exactly. All you have to do is you already have the playbook of like what kind of business are going to be successful, right? Like e-commerce, like fucking ride sharing, food delivery. They're not there. You go take them there, and then you just rip the benefits and you sell it to whatever big conglomerate, right?
Yeah. That's exactly.
So then that's good. Technically, you could do in Africa as well, or someone else could do in Africa. But the question is now, does the regulatory framework allow you to do that? You're gonna have to jump through 25 extra hoops, and then one of them, that hoop leads into a hole. You know, interesting. I don't know. Would you ever go back to Uganda, or like on what terms?
Not now, not for 10 years, not for 20, not in a while.
Figure out what's happening, right?
If it was up to me, I won't go back to Uganda, at least to live permanently for a long time. At least not now.
Right.
I still think there's a lot for me to learn in Europe.
So what's the option? Like if young Ugandans that are watching this, what would you advise? Learn how to code and get the fuck out?
No, not really.
Just follow your heart?
I'd say buckle up, because it's going to be a rough ride.
Right. It's it's interesting. It is very interesting.
Yeah, I'd say definitely learn how to code, get onto the internet. It's for me. I'm at a tough place, man. It's like, because I viewed the internet. I am here because of the internet. Right. I'm here because of the internet. So I'm like, man, if you take away the internet, man, you've taken away a great equalizer. Right? So I'm like, this is a hard thing to decide. So for young Ugandans, if the internet gets shut down, damn, that's a livelihood gone. So I'm just like,
it's a big alarm.
It's a big alarm.
Sending off a massive alarm. Yeah, exactly. If they can just cut off your internet, then like again, you can educate yourself through the internet. You can do a lot of stuff. You can become famous through TikTok nowadays, right? And then if that's taken away, then is your government really looking out for you?
Man, that's a tough question to ask.
All right, we're not going to answer this one. We want to make sure that Daniel still goes back and sees his family.
I mean, I don't really want to be 100% critical of the government. But yeah, I mean, you can take a lot of things, but taking away the internet, that's a bit.
That's a line.
That's just basically a dick move, man.
So I think, so the question is, in that situation, then just to kind of pivot away from that into like, then we need Elon Musk's satellite system then for internet.
Yeah.
That's the only bypass it, right? You have to have like a global way to. So in that situation, like you go to a much more. Once you remove that ability, if the government cannot take the internet away, then
it's got to be still. I mean, even still with an Elon Musk style system. Even if you have those small dishes, they connect directly to the
Starlink, yeah. In that situation,
if it's physically outside, yeah, that is an option.
Yeah.
But as long as there's a physical point of internet presence, you can shut. These things were shut down at the exchanges. It's not that they were at the exchange. That's where they were physically shut down.
Interesting.
I was looking at a graph. Internet traffic from Uganda went from 700 megabits per second to less than 250.
They still kept it for some of them.
Yeah?
They still kept it for their own kind of.
Those are the VPN people.
Right. Oh, okay. I see.
And some others, dude, it fucked a lot of things. Healthcare broke. People could not talk to the doctors. Sorry. People couldn't talk to doctors, couldn't do telemedicine. Banks couldn't do anything. People couldn't do online studies. Nothing. Nothing. It's just like the whole country went dark.
Not bueno.
Yeah, and I think the government they've created a lot more. So, you have this whole thing of, there's this international scrutiny because of Bobby Wine. Now there's this international scrutiny because of the internet shutdown, and they're creating a situation. They're putting more spotlight on themselves than they would want to put.
So what happens? A coup next?
Nah.
Is Biden gonna set up a coup?
Nah. No, and I hope not, because the coup is not the solution to the problem.
Right.
It's not. That's just stupid. They just need to have a dialogue. They need to have a dialogue, and they need to think about the kids.
I think that's a good note to end it on. Yeah, just have a dialogue and think about the kids.
I don't know. For me, that's what I'd suggest they do. But in any case, I'm in Berlin.
Yeah,
it's not that it's any easier necessarily.
Yeah, no, it's a lot easier to kind of talk from outside. Like once you're inside, you're like surrounded by this whole system. How are you gonna make it work?
Yeah, it's like was it Muhammad Ali? Everybody has a plan until they get punched.
No, it's Mike Tyson.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
In the face, yeah. Interesting. Well, that's been this particular episode. Daniel,
I don't know.
You wanted to follow you anywhere?
Nah.
No. Can't follow. Don't follow him anywhere. He's gonna go. He's gonna go like in hiding at the moment.
I'm not gonna go in hiding.
No, we're gonna do another episode in a couple of months. Exactly. In a couple of let's see, once the pandemic kind of shuts down. But it was a good chat. I find it interesting to see exactly how the things are kind of developing in that part of the world.
Yeah.
And especially, you can see you have I think this is the interesting thing about Bobby Wine is you have the young generation versus the old generation, and then the young generation is using young generation tools, PR. They're using they're using an art form to reach the people, right? And then we'll see exactly how far can that take it, and eventually, the young shall overthrow the old. No,
I don't think so.
We'll see what happens. All right. Well, thanks a lot for listening, guys, and catch you back on the next one. See you on TikTok.
See you on TikTok.